This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
Hello, Bad Movie Lovers. Thank you for tuning in. I don't know why I said tuning in. This isn't a radio station. You don't have to tune into anything. All you got to do is hit play. So thank you for doing so and joining me for another episode of Bad Movies We Love. I am your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of the stupid stuff!
And I'm still getting back into the rhythm of recording and more so editing on a regular basis, but I had a trip out of town, so I was in the car for 6 hours on Friday, and my editing day went out the window, and I was busy today on Saturday as well. So this is a Saturday night edit because I want to get this show out and not wait until next week. And if you don't know by now,
if you're listening to this, you are the Resistance.
That's right, and you can become an official member of the Resistance by going to ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com/bad movies we love, and you can become a contributing member there. Help me keep the lights on, help pay for fun intro music and all those wonderful things that make the show what it is. And if you can't become a contributing member, I totally understand. You can still help out the show by just word of mouth, telling a friend about it if you like the show, leaving a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts, and then maybe I'll read that review live-ish here at the outset of the show. And speaking of the show, I was joined today by V from the Movies You Missed podcast, and we got together to talk about what should have been an instant 90s classic, and that's Hackers from 1995.
It's the 90s Red Dawn. How did this not get more popular?
These are filmmakers that did something with intent and with care.
All these technical terms are used in the right context. They totally did their homework with this script.
The costuming in this movie is fantastic.
How many rash guards were you able to count during this movie?
They're definitely the cool kids.
Holy shit, it's Steven Spielberg!
There's a scene in this movie where he's dual-wielding cigarettes.
Dude, go big or go home. What are you doing?
Fisher Stevens on a skateboard, riding it like he's Marty McFly.
No, full Hulk Hogan, come on.
Hide the planet! Hide the planet!
Shut up and get in the car!
Hide the planet! Hide the planet!
I'm so excited to be joined by one half of the Movies You Missed podcast. We've been working on getting this off the ground for a while now, but V is here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too because I had never seen Hackers, even though it's almost 30 years old now. And it was always something that I knew existed. I'd seen sort of cover art for it around. It was right around the time when I was starting to form my own taste for movies as well. So it sort of was just in the periphery of all of these other movies of sort of a similar ilk that I never quite got around to. So I'm really glad to be able to check that box and say officially that I actually have seen Hackers at this point. But since you're the guest and this is the movie that you brought to the table, I want to know, why are we talking about Hackers?
Well, that is certainly news to me and makes me even happier about this episode. I didn't know you hadn't seen the movie before. When I sent you my list of proposed bad movies we love that I wanted to discuss today, I wasn't sure what you had seen and what you hadn't seen. So I'm really happy to introduce you to this film. Yes, you're right. It is almost 30 years old. And so I think it's good timing to talk about it. But when I was younger, I grew up with some older sisters, and one of my older sisters actually introduced me to this film right around when I was 10 or 11 years old, right after it came out. And two things really grabbed me. One, the soundtrack. It was so cool as a preteen. And second was the computer aspect of it. I was really into technology. I always have been. And it really opened up my eyes. I grew up on a farm. And so I wasn't aware of this whole other world of hacking or just knowing more about computers and being able to manipulate them and work with them. And it really started me down on the path that I'm actually on today. And, and I'm actually what I do for work is I'm a software engineer, so I honestly attribute hackers to that.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Was this the inspo
It
for
absolutely
your future
was.
career? That's pretty awesome. And honestly, like, so looking back though, as a software developer programmer right now, when you look back at how the reality of this was portrayed in the mid 90s, does it feel like something that is accurate, or does it feel like Hollywood maybe didn't really know how to portray this on screen?
Yes and no. So the aspects that were very accurate were, first of all, their excitement about these computers, and now 30 years later, those computers belong in a museum because at one point they're excitedly talking about this new computer and they're, oh, it's a 28.8 BPS modem, which is one of the oldest modems around. And so those aspects of it, of course, it's very dated, but tapping into phone lines, getting people's passwords, their tactics in a lot of this movie are very accurate and still accurate to this day, just done in slightly different ways. And even more recently, I just watched The Beekeeper in theaters, the new David Ayer
Yeah.
film, right? And Jason Statham goes after this group of guys who swindle older people out of their life savings by having them call this number and tricking them into giving away their passwords. And that's a thing that still happens today, right? And that's non-ethical hacking, of course. But there has been this evolution. So yes, part of the movie is definitely Hollywood. I think the visuals, which were done fantastically. I really enjoy a lot of the visual aspects of this film when they're depicting how they dive into the Gibson. That,
Mm,
of course, is very Hollywood. How fast-paced
yeah.
this all is a little bit more Hollywood, but there are some accuracies that I was pretty impressed with.
I'm glad to hear that. And like, this was a movie that we had sort of talked about doing the rounds on cable in the early 2000s, probably late
Mhm.
90s. Was this something that you went and saw in theaters when you were younger? Is this something that like just hit you when you were at home and were fascinated by it?
I certainly wasn't old enough to be taken to the theaters to see this film, especially because it wasn't a film that my parents would really be interested in.
Mm.
So one of my older sisters actually bought the VHS, and I remember her having the VHS and pushing play one day in our home, and that's what got me hooked.
Wow. Okay. That's sort of like the similar to my attachment to Godzilla films, is that my mom brought home a box because she was working for, who was she working for? I can't think of his name. The producer, Robert Evans. So she was working for Evans, and they had like struck a deal where one of their companies was producing the straight to video releases of Godzilla. So she brought me home a huge box, and then I just like chain smoked those VHSs, and it really just like made me this huge Godzilla fan. But this was a 1995 film, and there's a lot of other 1995 films that are also sort of about like computers and computer hacking, and I had seen those. So it's so crazy to me that like this was the outlier, because the net with Sandra
The
Bullock was
net,
this
yep.
year. Johnny Mnemonic was this year
Mhm.
as well, and I love Johnny Mnemonic. I mean, Sneakers was a couple years before this, but like you have that sort of interest in computer technology starting to ramp up like in the early to mid 90s. And honestly, like I see a lot of, I don't want to say the foundation, but maybe a little bit of the inspiration for some of the things that we ended up seeing in The Matrix a few years down the line from this film. So I want to ask you, what I ask all my guests is to give sort of a brief overview synopsis of this story for someone who maybe hasn't seen it and is considering whether or not they're going to stick with the rest of the podcast and have it spoiled for them.
Okay, fair. And it's funny because when I was getting ready to watch this movie this week, I thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, this is a pretty straightforward film. And then watching it again, because actually haven't seen it in a couple years, I remembered a lot of the subplots and realized that this is actually a little more of a complex movie. And this is pretty rich plot material for 1995. I was impressed. And I think that's what helps it hold up. But long story short, I'll try to make a crisp synopsis here. A hacker who is incredibly gifted moves to New York and meets new friends who are also hackers. And they get caught up in a pretty major corporate conspiracy where a security engineer is actually trying to steal from this company, and these hackers get framed for it and try to clear their names. How was
Wow,
that?
yeah, that's very concise. That's
Oh,
excellent.
okay. Okay.
It was so fast. I didn't even realize it was going to be that fast. No, that's fantastic. And you had mentioned to me also that like you worked in the industry. You had been in sort of like the LA area for about 10 years.
hmm
Can you contextualize or do you have any insight as to why something like hacking sort of captured the public imagination or at least Hollywood's imagination? Because War Games was in the 80s, and then we have stuff
hmm
like Swordfish with Hugh Jackman, which I think was late 90s, maybe right around the 2000 era. So
Yeah,
there
I think it
did
was like
seem to be
98,
this,
99.
yeah, this fascination with sort of this burgeoning horizon of computer technology.
I think it's again another example of Hollywood just trying to reflect the trends of pop culture. As you said, the 80s, of course, we had war games and some really great board game movies and that the 90s really were full of technology, which of course culminated in the Matrix. And it's just a reflection of what teens are into. And I'm surprised that there hasn't been any evolution of that since then,
Hmm.
because, of course, gaming is huge now. It's a multi billion-dollar industry that is much larger than the movie industry, actually. And I guess comic books are an evolution of that as well. It's funny because I always talk about in the 90s, I was really into comic books and I got mercilessly made fun of for it in junior high and high school, and now that's the popular thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a Hollywood trying to be reflective of people's interests, of course, in order to get people in seats in the movie theaters. And that's why there's a lot of times that they're a little bit out of touch with maybe the costuming or how people talk, because these are made by adults, but they're trying to reflect high school students and young people. But again, I didn't feel that way in this movie. I still think it feels pretty authentic and pretty genuine in terms of the culture. And man, I love those costumes.
The costuming in this movie is fantastic. I mean, they're all crazy choices,
hmm
but they're all very bold, very specific choices. And if you're only going to have sort of one shot to represent like counterculture, and you're going to have the Fisher Stevens character be in a suit, and he's going to be like the representation of like the sellout hacker who now works for the big conglomerate. So he
hmm
protects them from the people that he used to be, basically. And
hmm
so you have to like visually represent this in a very specific way. And it's like, okay, you have like this very puffy orange vest, and I mean Angelina's wearing very sheer stuff half the time. There's a lot of motorcycle jackets and no motorcycles being ridden. So there's that
right.
going on too. But I'm like, for some reason, I was just like, I love this because this kind of contemporary costuming is something that I've talked about on this show before when we were talking about something like Weekend at Bernie's, where you have this big scene, you're trying to really set the tone, set the mood, but this isn't a movie that is a period piece like a Napoleon, right? Where sort of the credit you're given as a costumer for that is justified, first of all, but also it's like making period authentic costumes seems to have maybe like a higher priority in the hierarchy of uh, respecting costuming than something contemporary and something that has to look modern, but also you're working with stuff that you maybe bought at like a thrift shop kind of thing. So there's a very specific skill to that I think is present here. And it really does add a lot of texture to these characters, because if they're all just like high school kids, then it's like, okay, well, high school kids are going to dress a certain way, but to make them part of this counterculture, to, Matthew Lillard's whole outfit in this movie. I mean, sometimes he's wearing a full like trench coat, sometimes it's like overalls. He's got the braids. Like everything about the design of the characters is done with a lot of intent and a lot of thoughtfulness. And I think Johnny Lee Miller's character is maybe like the most normal of them, because it's like he's the main character. He has to be the most palatable to the audience in that
Right.
way. But even his costume choices, once he like leaves his room where he's just wearing like a black shirt, is like it gets pretty wild.
I think you make a really good point that the notoriety with costume designers is really only applied when they are doing period pieces. And in fact, the costume designer for this film was fantastic. I agree with you. And how many rash guards were you able to count during this movie that they watched? And this movie takes place in New York. It was really fantastic to see. But the details in this movie, and I think you make a really good point, highlighting the counterculture aspect of this movie. It is very palatable. They do seem like very different people than mainstream kids, but they do it in such a way where these kids seem very authentic. You can absolutely relate to them and sympathize with them. And so there was that really nice fine line that they tread. But the details in this movie are fantastic. I mean, showing his 18th birthday card so you can see that, okay, he's now off probation. He's allowed to touch a computer again. That club that they went to,
Hmm.
every aspect of that club was so much fun. And that video game, I don't even know if it's a real video game, but that looked fun as well. And the funny thing is that now that we're in 2024, those fashions are now back. And I
Yeah.
bet you could see some of those vests at stores now because all of that fashion has come back around. And it's just so fun and bright and loud and really added layers to this movie for sure.
Yeah, I think something I've appreciated more with film over time is not being afraid to use color. Like
Yes, absolutely.
it's okay to be loud. And so like I mean, yes, I'm a sucker for like bright pink and like blue neons and stuff like that. So there's definitely times where I'll see a visual aesthetic that maybe is like it's going to put off a lot of people. But I see it and I'm like, hey, I like the decision to really like live in this moment and give us color. And like I saw Wonka in theaters and
Mhm.
I was like, I didn't know really what to expect, but in terms of the production design, I'm like, yeah, they went big, they went huge, and they did a lot of color and they did a lot of great stuff with the costumes. So I would like more films to be that colorful because it seemed like for a while there we sort of faded into this like everything's gonna have either that like sort of whitewash look to it, the Saving Private Ryan sort of filter
Mhm.
that it's like if you see this tone, if you see this color tone, you know that this movie is serious and wants to be taken seriously
Right.
kind of thing. But yeah, I love that not only are they represented as counterculture, but like in high school myself, I didn't dress like that. And if I had seen kids dressing like that, I would be like, okay, these are like a different sort of subset of high school kids than me. And I would recognize that very readily. So I would probably be like, oh, they're not the cool kids. But now looking back at this, I'm like, I want to hang out with them. They're definitely the cool kids in their school.
Absolutely, and those are the kind of kids I certainly would have related to in high school, but I always thought watching this growing up, I was like, "Man, they're too cool for me." So that's kind of funny that they wouldn't be rated as the cool kids, but I certainly thought they were very cool.
I was a nerd. I just didn't have style like that.
Same, I
Not at
still
that
don't.
age. Hey, not all of us are getting dressed by Roger Burton though. So shout out to Roger Burton for the costumes in this. Really just fantastic, but like subtle, smart work that
Mhm.
paints a huge picture, a huge portion of this picture, and does it in a way that really it's never super focused on the costumes. It's never like, oh, here, we really want you to pay attention to the fashion choices that they're making. They just kind of show up in their scenes and they're wearing what they're wearing. And that I love about it.
Yes, I think that not being so ostentatious that the costume is the only thing you look at, it just is very natural. It seems like this is exactly the clothing that this character would be wearing.
Yeah, and I read that the production had gone to like hacker conventions as well and sort of
Nice.
studied techniques. So I don't know if they were there and like taking notes on the costume choices or not, but I'd be really interested to be a fly on the wall during those production meetings where it's like we're bringing cast and crew, director's going to be here, and we're going to just sit in on this convention of hackers. And then I'm thinking, wait a second, like, isn't the whole point of being a hacker to like be anonymous? You're gathering all in one large place, learning about how to overthrow government systems and hack phone companies and stuff. That seems like a trap, but it worked out apparently.
It really did. And funny enough, now there are big security conferences. It's usually in Vegas every year. And they had it every single year until COVID, actually. I think they've talked about resuming it, but it's now because companies realize how important security is. There is a ton of money thrown into this industry of cybersecurity now because you have hackers on one side, but then realizing that, again, that Fisher Stevens character, you can make a lot of money being a security analyst or a cybersecurity engineer for these larger companies. And so they do have these big security conferences for people to do hacking without getting arrested for it, which a lot of engineers have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, come over to the, quote unquote dark side. Like you wear a suit, you still get to
Exactly.
hack, but you got to wear a suit and tie. But you'll have retirement plan and you'll get
And
paid
health
well.
insurance.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to live underground as a hacker. You can do it for us. But I think now's a good time where I want to ask you if you had to reason why somebody would say that this is, in fact, a bad movie because it has a Metascore of 46. That's well within the low range that we
Mhm.
look at when we bring films onto the show. User rating 6.2. That's pretty good. So why would you think that somebody would look at this as a bad movie?
I have no idea. I have no notes. No, I'm kidding. I could understand it a little bit. First of all, again, like you said, it's very counterculture. It's a subset of computers. And so not only do you have to be a technology inclined person, but there's a subset of that as well. And so it really would only appeal to a certain amount of people. I think right off the bat, that's a big indicator of the score. And then also from that, it's there are some ridiculous parts to this movie in that these are kids going up against a big corporation. Things go well for them, and the idea of this bad security officer doing something like creating a computer virus for oil tankers, I think a lot of people can't really either relate to it or wouldn't see that as something realistic. And now in the future, now that we're 30 years on from this movie, the intention of just stealing $25 million from a multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate. I'm like, dude, go big or go home. What are you doing? Put a couple extra zeros on the back of that number. And so I think there are a couple of pieces of this plot and these characters that maybe a lot of people wouldn't relate to. But rewatching it again this week, I don't think it's a bad movie. I actually didn't find that there were any cringy aspects or scenes to this film. The music still is really fun and holds up. The performances are all very good by a whole host of people that everyone would recognize, by the way. There are so many
Hmm.
bit parts played by recognizable character actors, which is a lot of fun to seek out as well. And so yeah, I really think that it's based on the characters and the subject matter more so than how this movie was produced or the acting within it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like, since I had never seen it, I'm going into it with the sort of
Right.
expectation of like a lot of people didn't like this. Like, let's see what's going to happen here. And I totally felt that, like, sure, it's dated, it feels 90s, but to me, that's not a negative. So, my best guess would be that this is, like you said, it's too much counterculture, like Johnny Mnemonic, where it
Mhm.
is like the ruffians of the tech world versus something like The Net with Sandra Bullock, where it's like, yeah, Sandra Bullock is in the lead, and I don't even remember, she has her money stolen or something. She gets involved with this guy who's handsome but also a creep, and it's like that's just more traditional sort of Hollywood thriller with a tech element. So it's not really like pushing you too much into the tech side of things, where this, for people that maybe weren't ready for it, seems a little bit maybe too heady in that way, because there are a lot of specifics of, hey, like King of 9X, I think he says, right? So it's like, oh, this particular type of security system that is represented. So they did their homework, but not too many people in the general public would understand that they did do their homework in terms of stuff like that. So like, I am reading about it after the fact. I'm like, wow, they really did spend a lot of time trying to be as realistic and authentic as possible. And that is surprising, when sort of the low hanging fruit would be to make a version of this that doesn't do that, that sort of pretends to do that, and just tries to cash in on the idea of, oh, tech thriller and computers are scary and this is how scary they can be, kind of thing.
I think that's a really good point, because now, as someone who's been in the technology industry for quite some time, watching this movie again, you're absolutely right. All these technical terms are used in the right context. They totally did their homework with this script. And diving into why some people might like it, I know this sounds a bit surface level, but this is the 90s, remember? Angelina Jolie is the lead lady in this movie. She has very short hair.
Very.
And it's the 90s. Like that, she was the first woman I ever saw with really short hair, because it took me several years later to be able to watch Alien 3 at the time, because I was too young for it. But I think that that's also an aspect of that counterculture that you're talking about. And again, it's just not mainstream in terms of its subject matter. But for what it is, for the subject matter, it's incredibly well told as a story.
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot more comprehensive than I would have expected for a mid 90s computer thriller to be. And, I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't like expecting it to be bad. Like, when you said we're going to do it on the show, I was like, okay, there's obviously going to be something good about it. But walking into it blind, I'm like, okay, I really don't know much. I don't want to know too much. I will do my due diligence on the back end. But going into it, I kind of just want to jump right in. It's like, I know Angelina Jolie's in it. I know Johnny Lee Miller's in it. And that's all I really want to know right now. So it was a pleasant surprise to see like Renoli Santiago and Matt Lillard, and I mean Wendell Pierce. What's his face? Mark Anthony is like, he has no dialogue in the movie basically, but he's just like hanging out in one of his very first acting roles. Penn Jillette is in this movie as well. So it's kind of
Jesse
just like
Bradford.
crazy. Yeah, Jesse Bradford, who's 16. There's a scene in this movie where he's dual wielding cigarettes that he's smoking. And I'm like, wait a second, does he have one in each hand? Am I seeing this right? And this 16-year-old kid, he's the only one, by the way, who is actually of the correct age for this movie. The first thing I thought when I put it on, I was like, wait a second, Johnny Lee Miller's supposed to be 18 in this?
Right.
I was like, he looks like he's 30. So, I mean, he was only 23 in fairness, but yeah, I see his 5 o'clock shadow and I'm like, he doesn't strike me as an 18-year-old here. But then you get Jesse Bradford, who, yeah, he's smoking from both hands and he does a lot of smoking in this movie. And I'm just like, okay, he's a 16-year-old. Was this like really a necessary choice for them to make for his character? But you know what? I heard that he auditioned for the lead and ended up passing on that. And he was like, this is a character that fits me better. So to have the foresight to know that at that age, I think is pretty impressive as well.
It is, and I think that whole aspect of his character is a setup for the joke when he's on probation and at the addicts meeting, where he's chain smoking and drinking tons of coffee, and he's like, "No, I'm not addicted to my computer. I'm not an addict," and he's like continues to smoke, which was a good joke in the movie. And yes, I always love watching movies that is supposed to be teenagers and they're all in their 20s, and you can definitely tell that Jesse Bradford is significantly younger. But you make a good point about all the supporting characters as well. And I like that you have fresh eyes on this movie, because one of the things that we like to talk about on our show is it nostalgia or is it good? And so for me, a lot of this is nostalgia. Of course, I watched this, this was very formative for not only my movie watching, but also my life in general. And so having a friend now see it with fresh eyes can reflect on how good this movie actually is. So I'm really glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, because it's not something where I mean, like, I obviously love '90s films. I grew up with a lot of those '90s films, but looking back at this, it's not polished in the way that like a big budget studio '90s movie would be. You know, it's gritty, it's real, it's grounded, it did its homework on the subject it's covering. So it's not this like exercise in placating to the audience, you know. These are filmmakers that did something with intent and with care, and that's something that I think I've learned a lot more about through the course of doing the show is that even when something is not, well, let's call it not quote unquote perfect, right? I think intent goes a long way. Like if you're trying to do something the right way for the right reasons, that comes across on camera. Where if you can successfully sort of mimic something but not care about it, that also comes across on camera. And this is a very good exercise in showing that care and attention goes a long way. Like I said, I love the color in this movie. I love the style in this movie. It takes big, bold swings. And one of the things that I read about the sort of interpretation of the computer graphics is they're like, we don't want to have like actual computer graphics. We're going to do this like a different way. But some of the transitions in this movie are fantastic. And especially the transition to the title card very early in this movie. I'm like,
Yes.
wow. I was like, it's just kind of like a lost art of having that sort of hard transition. Well, I guess a little bit of a soft transition as it fades from like that to the computer motherboard as they're flying through and it just like
Hmm.
maps it over the city. Very, very cool stuff. Big ideas in this movie as well. So yeah, I really had a great time with it. I think I want to do maybe a 90s-ish watch party of all of these kind of movies. And I definitely want to rewatch Johnny Mnemonic now because that's a movie that definitely belongs on this show that I've never quite gotten to cover, but I've always had a soft spot for it. And I'm like, wait a second, isn't Dolph Lundgren Jesus in that movie? And there's a
Yes.
dolphin that's the leader of an underground group of rebels like these people in this movie. So I'm like, yeah, that movie's definitely weird. And it doesn't hone in on sort of like having enough concise ideas together to sort of all point them in the same direction. It's a little more scattered than this movie, but uh I still like the style that they both adhere to quite a bit. And like I said, I think if I had to guess, I would say that the Wachowskis probably took some of the hacker culture influence into the Matrix with them because sort of the whole romance that's there between Angelina and Johnny Lee Miller, crash and burn, and well, he's not zero cool anymore at that point. I forget. No, she's acid burn. He's crash override.
Override.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, the idea that these are two different hackers that like haven't quite met each other at this point, and they don't know that they're the hackers that are in competition. They meet and they strike up a romance. I mean, Trinity also has a very, you know, short haircut in the Matrix as well. So sure, like it's not all leather, but they go to the club and they got their own like hacker culture going on. The people that come to buy the discs from Neo, right? When
Hmm.
in the very beginning of the Matrix, those people are all sort of dressed like these characters in this movie. So, you know, I don't know if the connection's real, but I'm going to say that it is because it sounds better that way.
I'm going to agree with you now that you've highlighted all of it. You're absolutely right. And it also has a phenomenal soundtrack that is very relevant not only to the culture, but also the tone of the movie. And I think that watching, first of all, I'm more than happy to just have a series of tech movies that we talk about together because I'm more than happy to discuss Johnny Mnemonic. I love that movie as well.
Sweet.
I don't think it's as good as Hackers. I'm gonna be upfront about
It's
that part of
crazier
it.
though.
It's insane. It's got a lot of it's got this Total Recall vibe to it, in my opinion. It's very much post-apocalyptic, where Hackers is very real world. But how can you ever say no to Dina Meyer and Ice T? I mean, come on, right?
I agree completely. I feel like I want to watch that right now, but I
Same.
put it in the notes. It's in the notes. So I finally found someone to do Johnny Mnemonic with me. So
Great.
we'll do it for a future episode for sure. Um, but I think you and I were both probably too young for this movie when it was getting marketed. So it's not a movie that was made for us when we were younger. So now is always a good time. Take a break, go back to the trailer, and see what this movie was actually marketed as, and find out who was supposed to go see this movie and why the people that went and saw it maybe didn't like it as much as we ended up liking it.
Greetings and salutations to all you hackers out there in Radioland. Hacking computers is great and all, but biohacking is the way of the future. That's why I'm here to tell you about Gigabytes. It's the high-octane energy chew that provides hours of balanced vitality without any of that crash override. Most energy drinks and supplements are just caffeine-based, and that can be rough on both your stomach and your heart. But Gigabytes are made with 100% organic adrenochrome. And thanks to advancements in tech and modern medicine, it's harvested safely from adrenal glands grown with human stem cell tissue. While gum loses its flavor and other energy chews can break down quickly, Gigabytes blends the best of both worlds to give you a satisfying but resistant chew that is guaranteed for 1 billion bites. So you'll have plenty of energy on demand to keep hacking the planet, even when your jaw has had enough. It's the everlasting gobstopper for the computer generation, and it's now available online. So when you need a pick-me-up that has teeth, choose the energy chew that has bite. Choose Gigabytes.
You think I would have gotten the hang of this by now?
All good.
There we go. Okay. Can you see this okay?
Yep.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Let's go.
I love that it says Matthew Lillard movie.
Right? Feel bad for Johnny Lee Miller. This is the transition scene here. Come on, that's great.
Love it. I love it.
They inhabit.
Dave?
Yeah, Mom?
What are you doing?
I'm taking over a TV network.
I'll finish up, honey, and get to sleep.
The glasses, too, very matrixy.
At night.
Publicly owned computer systems.
Hack the planet. Hack the planet!
It's not just something they do.
Sure this sweet machine's not going to waste?
Are you challenging me?
It's who they are.
I win, you wear
Oh, there's a
dress
motorcycle.
like
Okay.
If I win,
Old KLR.
They can crack any code. And get inside any system.
Hello? Mr. Gill, according to our records, you're dead.
What?
But this time,
come here, look at this.
It's some kind of virus.
Unless $5 million is transferred to the following account, I will capsize 5 oil tankers.
they just hacked the wrong
I love
guy.
that he's been. I love that he just
He's about
rides
to commit
a
the
skateboard
perfect
almost
computer
everywhere
crime.
in this movie.
Created a virus that's going to cause a worldwide disaster.
And they're about to take the blame.
A hacker planted the virus. But it's the perfect cover.
We're being framed.
Can we be allies?
I don't play well with others.
Wow, we are fried.
Okay, let's nail it.
He only smashes his radio. He doesn't even smash his computer.
I know. And it's like the cheapest piece of technology in his entire room.
Right?
Stop this guy.
He's just being a prick.
Are you nuts? Come at me! Unlike any the world has ever seen.
Never send a boy to do a woman's job.
Hackers of the world unite.
Cops on the building. I need more time.
This is the end, my friend. United Artists welcomes you to the new world.
Interesting to see that VR technology has not really like come that far.
It
since
really
this movie.
hasn't, right? Yeah.
I mean, the way it looks inside the headset is much better, but like the headset and the handle is basically the same thing.
Look like an Oculus.
Yeah.
Hackers.
It's the 90s Red Dawn. How did this not get more popular?
Right? Yeah, I mean, it seems fun. It actually reminds me a little bit of like Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann's movie, right? Because it's just like style, color, attitude, people that are supposed to be teenagers. There's a love story in the mix. There's obviously like the big bad on one side, the lovers on the other side. I mean, they're not star-crossed lovers here in this case, but they are at odds a little bit.
And the quick edits.
Yeah.
And I love how they really highlighted and illustrated his thought process. Johnny Lee Miller's, for the longest time when I was a kid, I was like, oh, his name's Dave. Because I'd never heard of the name Dade before, but it's
Right.
Dade. And when he first meets Angelina Jolie, and there's all these clips of love story, and actually Errol Flynn's Adventures of Robin Hood is one of the clips that they show. And then when she bullies him and catches him in that prank, then his mindset changes and he wants to go after her because he's so pissed. And I just loved all the quick edits in this movie too, which, like, as you said, is very reminiscent of Romeo and Juliet as well.
Yeah, and when we were talking about why someone might say that this is a bad movie, it's like, okay, it incorporates things that were popular like skateboarding and rollerblades and stuff like that. It's like, oh wow, okay, just bring the rollerblades with you. I get it. Like you don't have a car or anything, like you kind of need a way to get around. That makes sense. But there is a scene that happens near the end of this movie with Fisher Stevens and the skateboard. And I have to bring this up because it's hilarious. I rewound it and watched it. So Johnny's character Dade and Fisher Stevens, who is, what's his name?
Eugene.
What's his hacker name?
The Plague. That's
Plague.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
Remember when Penn is like, Mr. the Plague?
But he's very adamant about don't call me Eugene throughout the movie. But so it's interesting that he wants to like keep his hacker alias, but also sort of differentiate himself from what he would consider like the punk hackers that are what he used to be, I would imagine. So it's like I'm maybe projecting a little bit for him, but I think that's a credit to the script and to the character writing that you can sort of read between the lines and figure it out for yourself as the audience. That way they don't have to spell it out for you, which is a sign of good filmmaking and confidence in your audience that we're going to give you enough to, use your imagination and trust you with that. But they agree to exchange a copy of this disc that has all of the damning information on it. It's the key piece of evidence in this battle that they're having between these characters. And they agree to meet up. And Johnny Lee Miller is standing out there on the corner in his vest, and he's got the disc in hand. And then you see lights in the distance, and it's like, okay, there's a car. They're coming to get him. It's a limo. And then alongside the limo is Fisher Stevens on a skateboard, riding it like he's Marty McFly. And he just never stops moving. He just lets go of the limo, zips by, grabs the disc, and then continues, meets the limo on the other side, grabs it, and they drive away. Like, this is a very particular choice in this movie that did not have to be made. They can pull up in the limo, he hands him the disc, that's it. So the idea that like they wanted to incorporate that as part of the character who has been skateboarding all over the place, it's hilarious, number one, but number two, it kind of like points back to this thing with him wanting to be called the Plague, is like there is this part of him that is still a hacker like these kids, and he's like not quite willing to let go of that, even though he has switched teams more or less.
Absolutely. And first of all, New York City infrastructure would never allow for that skateboard to keep going once you let go of that limo. But like you spoke about before, it is very reminiscent of The Matrix, where Neo's getting picked up underneath that overpass when it's raining, and he gets in the back of a very large, it's I think an old Lincoln, right? And when I watched it this time, I actually was reminded of that scene in The Matrix. So again, another parallel.
Yeah, I was surprised actually, like how many parallels I saw between the films, and I'm like, it doesn't really surprise me because this is probably a movie that only a certain type of like demographic got into because of what it was. But then if you're part of that culture and then you're going to go turn around and make a movie like at the end of this decade, it doesn't surprise me that something like this would be an influence, or something like Johnny Mnemonic, where there's like data storage in your head, which is a big part of the Matrix basically as well. So I'm not at all surprised to see those connections, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were direct influences, but I've never actually like read an interview with the Wachowskis that said, yeah, we love these movies and we wanted to make it with like a lot more leather.
Definitely wasn't as bright and shiny as Hackers, that's for sure.
Definitely not, but it still has its style. So we've got all of these supporting characters, like Wendell Pierce is an agent for, was it the FBI?
Secret Service.
Secret Service.
Yeah.
Why is he a Secret Service agent dealing with this problem?
Because I believe they said in the movie that Secret Service is in charge of computer crimes and financial crimes. And he makes an offhanded comment. Again, you're talking about setting up the storyline and just really smart exposition. He makes a comment in passing, just like, oh my God, I protected the president for years and now I got to watch these teenagers. And that's actually how I made the first time watching this movie the connection, because they called them agents. So for the longest time, I thought they were FBI agents at first.
Yeah, that makes sense. And his costuming, like his look, is basically Malcolm X, but like the opposite of Malcolm X. And I was like, this is like, even all the way down to the glasses, I'm like, this is a very particular choice. Like, I'm not 100% sure what that choice is trying to say, but at the same time, it's very noticeable. And he's such a great actor, though, that he really like brings that sort of peeved, annoyed cop vibe to the movie. And there's a line of dialogue. I think it's maybe Mark Anthony's only line of dialogue where he says, we've got a secured hard drive here. And then he looks to him and is like, say it in English. Like, are those, it's not even like complicated computer language, but the idea that like this guy is so far removed from this thing that he's actually investigating. Like, he doesn't have the knowledge to understand a pretty basic sentence. Like, okay, maybe you don't know exactly what a hard drive is, but you know what secured means. And I think you should be able to parcel out what a secured hard drive means from that sentence. And you obviously have a guy that works with you to help you with some of these things in Mark Anthony's character. But yeah, the way he's like just dismissive of hearing those words is like, yeah, this is the sort of like curmudgeonly, like uncle kind of character.
He hates his new assignment, that's for sure.
He does.
Can we also talk about the beginning of this movie and the beginning of that trailer? That's what reminded me of it. The old United Artists logo.
Yeah.
And that will always make me think of GoldenEye because, and that's actually another movie that came out in 95. That James Bond movie, which is one of my all-time favorite James Bond films, and the United Artists logo pops up and it has that really cool beat behind it. And that's how you open up onto GoldenEye. And so we like to talk as movie lovers about what film makes us think of a specific logo in the beginning. And that United Artists logo absolutely made me think of GoldenEye.
That's awesome. I mean, for me, it's definitely like that old Toho logo where it comes up and it's like, oh yeah, Godzilla's about to get here kind of thing. But
Nice.
it's funny you mentioned United Artists. We actually, around the corner when I was growing up, the small movie theater down the street from me was a United Artists theater. And then it got bought and it became like a $2 discount theater. And then when COVID hit, it went out of business. But I was like, man, if I hit the lottery, I would totally like refurbish this. I'll buy the building next door. We'll turn it into like bar restaurant. You do, dinner and a movie kind of setup, have them work together, and then show like smaller stuff that isn't going to get shown elsewhere. Do like, reruns of older movies, do film programming type stuff like that. So if I ever become a millionaire, that will
I'd
be
go.
a project. I know it's not like the best area anymore, but it's only because they've just let the theater go completely.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, you're not investing in anything, but there is a building that they film all the time at. So like all the shows that film in the LA area, if they need like a big empty lot with like what looks like an office building in the back, they always film there. I know I've seen it in Veep a few times. It's been in I don't know if it's 911 or one of the other like police sort of like actiony shows.
Mhm.
But yeah, they shut down that lot and film there all the
Like
time. And
The Rookie or something.
yeah, definitely. And there was one where they turned the movie theater into a like casino. So they just shoot the outside and then they digitize like casino on the marquee. And I was like, hey, that's the UA theater. But yeah, when I was young, we used to like walk there all the time from school when we were like doing the summer program. And they're like, well, we don't know what to do with you, so we're going to the movies. And that was like our theater for a long time. So it was really sad to just see it fall into disrepair. But you know, it happens, and it's a bummer to see like United Artists just kind of go that route in general.
I do miss those $2 theaters too, and just I think Alamo Drafthouse is one of the few chains that is trying to keep that whole vibe alive, right? The with the old seats, and you can have a beer and everything, and the type of movies they show as well, which is really nice to see it still trying to survive in some shape.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people speak really highly about Alamo, and there's not one that's like super close to me, so I
Mhm.
just haven't gone. But then I looked at their ticket pricing. I'm like, that's really competitive for like the LA area, and everybody says that they're much more strict about people being on their phones and stuff because
Yes.
my goodness, like the theater experience out here has gotten bad. I mean, we're going off on a tangent now, but give me a second. We went and saw, of all movies, Freud's Last Session. So it's this small theater. It's a Lemley theater, so indie chain.
Mhm.
It's in Encino, and this is the theater that is basically like they only show stuff for like the basically 50 to 70 crowd. And so Freud's Last Session, like random foreign films get put in there, but definitely targeted selection with their screens. And so we go to see the movie. There's two couples behind us that are all probably in their 60s, and they don't stop talking the whole time.
Whoa.
And it's like, hey, stop talking, please. Shh, talking, lean over. They won't stop talking. And then, like 3 seats to the right of me, there's a girl that's maybe like 12, her dad, and I think her mom is there on the other side, but I can't quite see her. But both of them are on their phone, and the dad like doesn't have any awareness that like his screen brightness is on 100.
Oh
And the
god.
daughter, at least, she pulls her phone out. She recognizes that like she's in a movie theater. She turns the brightness on the screen down. So I'm like, okay, on the grand scale of things, like she's trying to be considerate while also being very disinterested in this movie. But the dad is like, he's got his phone out, the brightness is on, and then he's leaning over and like talking to his daughter at full volume several times during the movie. And I'm like, what is happening? I came to this theater specifically to avoid the kind of BS that I see at other theaters where all
Right.
the kids are on their phone and everybody's talking.
That's really shocking, not only the demographic, but also, again, like you said, the type of theater. You think those non-mainstream theaters would be the place that it's the quote unquote safe space, right? For people who really love going to the movies. And it's such an epidemic these days. I really don't know of the solution because it has only been getting worse, unfortunately. And I'm very rarely particular about things. Yeah, I'm a t-shirt and jeans kind of person. I'm pretty
Yeah.
low key, but I think it's just because I'm so passionate about movies. People either talking or being on their phone in theaters is so disruptive to me and something that is super bothersome. So yeah, I'm really surprised with that theater in particular that you'd encounter that. But I am wondering how Freud's Last Session was because it was on my list of movies to watch.
It's good. I think it's maybe like not great. Like, I don't think it's like best picture caliber type of movie. I don't think it's really trying to be either. But for me, I was like kind of sad because on the one hand, like this theater experience is not proving to be very enjoyable at all. But on the other
Mhm.
hand, it's like we're not going to have Anthony Hopkins forever. And
Right?
the fact that
Yeah.
he's still doing high level work at this point, I feel like is worthy of more reverence and respect at this point in his career. So that's why it was like a little more frustrating. Like it's 7 o'clock on a Friday night. You showed up to see like a 90-year-old Anthony Hopkins acting, and then you're talking the entire time through the movie. Like it just to me, it's like, why are you even here kind of thing. But beyond that, it's basically like a long theological discussion between Freud and sort of a contemporary, but another professor who has taken on like a positive view of theology. And so it's just basically this debate of ideas. And then you sort of like see a little bit behind the scenes of his life as a person and his relationship with his daughter and sort of like what that means to the conversations they're having. Yeah, it's good.
Good. That's good to hear. And yes, Anthony was the reason why I was really interested in watching that movie because I mean Hopkins still putting out these amazing performances is so impressive. And as you said, he's getting older and very quite old now, and I definitely don't want to take that for granted either. So it's good to hear that he put forward a good performance that it's worth watching.
Yeah, I feel like he's one of those guys that's like always worth watching. Like, it
Like
doesn't even
Gene
matter.
Hackman, right?
Yeah, whatever the project is, I don't really care too much because he's the kind of guy who's going to show up and deliver every
Mhm.
time. And one of my favorite stories from when my mom sort of was working in like the industry adjacent businesses, she's doing like event planning and coordinating for it was Movie Line magazine at the time. It might have been Young Hollywood, but they had like an award show at the I don't know if it's the end of the year, but they had their own little award show. And one of the people she ended up working with was Anthony Hopkins and his team. And I remember driving somewhere in the car with her, and she had a car phone like before it was popular, right? She had the one that's built into the car. And she played us a voicemail on the car phone, and it was Anthony Hopkins calling her personally just to thank her for like the work that she had done and for being so kind. And I was like, that says a lot about his character. And so I've always carried that with me as like he's not just a great actor, he seems like he's a very genuinely nice person that cares about people. And so anytime I get a chance to support Anthony, I'm always on board for that.
That's so great to hear.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's a story that I don't really like tell often. So I'm glad I got a chance to tell it. Uh,
Good.
but we'll circle back to the movie that we're actually talking about.
Oh,
And that's
right, right.
yeah, that's Hackers. I mean, I'm having fun. We can not talk about it, but I think for the listeners' sake, we should get back on track. Um, there is some interesting choices with the decision to include sex dreams in this movie. Let's just, call it what it is. I was surprised by it because for a movie that is like portraying sort of, I mean, they're not adolescents, they're teenagers. I mean, they're gonna be horny. That's perfectly fine. But like just in the context of what is happening in this movie, to sort of have these like psychedelic sex dreams happening for both of the characters, actually. I mean, I don't dislike it. I just was really caught off guard by it. So is that something for you that was like an endearing addition to the movie, or is it something that was a hurdle?
That's a really good point that you bring up because I don't ever remember those dreams when I have not watched the movie in a while or even after watching the movie. Like that's not something I wrote down in my notes. It's not even something I thought about. The good news is it's not gratuitous, but it is really random, right?
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if the choice was these two people are not getting together throughout basically this whole movie until the end. We have to drum up some sort of chemistry, some sort of evidence that they do go well together. And I'm wondering if that's why. But you're right. They are very out of left field in a lot of ways and don't add a ton to the story. But the nice thing is they're so short. I always forget about them right after I watch the movie.
Yeah, it was just a thought that came in because I couldn't quite think of like what I had seen Angelina in prior to this. And so I'm like, well, I don't know if it's her first movie, but it's definitely like somewhere earlier in the curve. And
Mhm.
so for them to sort of like ask her to be topless, sort of for the sake of facilitating this romance that they're already facilitating anyway. And she's like wearing that sheer shirt at some other point where she's sitting at the desk. I'm like, that's just a lot to ask of like a 20-year-old actress in Hollywood where the movie isn't about them like having a sex life. That's not like what this movie is geared toward. There's not like a real
Right.
sex scene in this movie that I recall. So
No.
for them to sort of like insert it this way, just like it seemed like a weird decision. I mean, she's obviously, she's on board with it. She's been naked in other movies.
Yes, I mean, she did grow up in the industry. She was a
Mhm.
model for a long time as well. She appeared in multiple music videos. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think this was one of her first feature films and she is younger and yeah, she unzips her jacket and so you can see her topless for a second. And there are several outfits that she wears in this movie without a bra that are now obvious now that we have large TVs in higher definition, of course, which wasn't obvious when we were kids watching this movie, I can tell you that. And so those style choices, I think, and those just filmmaking decisions, I think, are very reminiscent of, hey, she's the woman in this film, and this is the '90s kind of thing, which is unfortunate, but it didn't feel exploitive to me, which is good. But at the same time, going back to those dreams, I agree. They do feel a little out of place. That's a really good point to make.
Yeah, and it wasn't that like I don't. understand it, or I can't contextualize it, or I can't like put myself in his shoes or in her shoes in that situation where they're having this sort of like competitiveness between the two of
Mhm.
them, yet they are actually attracted to each other and it's sort of like seeping into their subconscious. But it was only those two instances where it was like one for each of them. And
Mhm.
it didn't really, build on this idea of sort of how their dreams are really playing into their reality. Like if you take out the dreams, all you're really losing is sort of like them waking up sweaty and being like, "Oh wow, I really am like into this other person that we are supposed to understand." So I would say like maybe if I was really being super nitpicky about it, I'd be like, okay, well, I don't necessarily know. Like if you had continued the theme of like them having these sort of dreams like throughout the course of the film, and there's maybe
Mhm.
like four or five of them, and that's a through line to the end, and then they're maybe dreaming at the same time about each other, and then they wake up, and it's like, okay, well, now you're making a much more like informed stylistic choice about how you want to approach presenting that to the audience. So I don't know. It's just something that I didn't expect to really like pick up on, but then when I watched it, I couldn't help myself and it went into the notes. So be it.
That's fair. No, no, it's fair. They are very random, and I don't know if maybe more of that was cut, and so that was a little of a subplot of their chemistry that just ended up on the floor. And I think it became very obvious to me watching this movie repeatedly as I got older that this movie was originally a rated R film, that they
Mm.
had to edit down to be PG-13. I'm sure for marketing purposes and to try to get more teenagers to watch this film, because there's several ADR pieces in this film where it's very obvious that they had to record audio in the booth after this movie in post-production.
Mm.
So, first of all, the most obvious one is between Fisher Stevens and Lorraine Bracco when they're on the escalators, and that whole scene is ADR'd. But when Jesse is talking about a bank and pumping out money, it's supposed to be BF nowhere, but it actually gets ADR'd in the movie. And the same with Angelina Jolie talking to Johnny Lee Miller when he's typing on her computer. She says, "I hope you don't screw the same way you type." And that's actually ADR'd because she did say the F word
Mm.
originally. And it's very similar to in Galaxy Quest, right? When
Ah.
Sigourney Weaver is like, "Well, screw that." And it's so obvious that's not what she originally said when filming the movie. And so I'm wondering if that dream sequence, maybe there was more to it, but because it was a little more explicit, they had to cut it to make it PG-13.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense and brings me back to what I said earlier about wanting like so many versions of movies to just be like the true rated R version of the movie that they're supposed to be. Cause it's like if you're making a rated R movie, you're not making it for kids. So then why try to then trim it to make it for kids other than the very obvious, like, hey, we need more people to buy tickets, which is why like so many things are PG-13 now because you want to be accessible to the broadest audience. But I just feel like artistically it's so limiting to like not let a movie be the version of itself that it wants to be and that it was supposed to be.
I totally agree with you. And this actually goes back to your very first episode of your podcast when you did Roadhouse, because that was when you discussed the new remake of Roadhouse coming
Mm.
out with Jake
Oh yeah.
Gyllenhaal. And one of the things that you and Donnie talked about was you hope that this is going to be a rated R film. Roadhouse as PG-13 would be ridiculous and
Yeah.
not good, right?
I honestly don't know because I just saw a bunch of people talking about it today because I guess it officially got announced that it's going straight to Amazon. It's not going to get a theatrical release, which is weird as well because it's like you have Jake Gyllenhaal, you
Yeah.
have Conor McGregor, so you've like the most popular fighter in the world and a pretty popular A-list actor, and it's a remake of a pretty well-known property. You think there would be some legs there at the theater because I would definitely go see that movie at the theater
Absolutely.
just out
Yeah.
of morbid curiosity, if nothing else, because the Conor McGregor's never acted before. And to have him be like a sizable role in this movie is an interesting decision. I trust Jake. I know that he'll deliver. That's not a question. But to see whether or not Connor can act on that level and like maintain that for the course of an entire film is going to be a pretty interesting thing to watch. So, I mean, I'll watch it on Amazon, of course, but it should have gotten at least a week in theaters.
Absolutely. And just like you said, the morbid curiosity of Conor McGregor, because he's either going to go the John Cena route or the Hulk Hogan route of acting chops, right? And so it's going to be one of two extremes, absolutely. But the pure marketability of every aspect that you just mentioned definitely warrants a theatrical release. I agree.
And I honestly don't know if I would prefer him to go the John Cena route or the
No,
Hulk Hogan
full Hulk
route.
Hogan. Come on.
Let's do it.
There's
What is the
one way that should go?
Mr. Nanny was the one with Christopher Lloyd that was
What was
like,
his Santa movie?
oh, Santa with muscles.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, No Holds Barred. He had it wasn't called Tropic Thunder, but it was like Thunder something, which was the TV show that he was working on when he was in WCW. Like he's got a surprisingly large film catalog to go through. And I knew like when I was doing like the wish list episode and I was looking and I was like, okay, there's like one or two. And I was like, oh wow, like Hogan's got a bunch. And I was like, okay, maybe we could do like a whole Hulk Hogan month on this show. But like I don't know that I want to be that invested in Hulk Hogan movies.
That's a lot of Hulk Hogan.
It is indeed. But I think we're at a pretty good place where we can do some trivia. You want to do some trivia?
Sure.
All right.
Time for trivia.
Let's see where I put my notes. Okay. So, question number 1. You might actually be better at this than I thought because you're an actual programmer. So, we'll see. Question number 1. The name of the high-tech computer system they break into is named the Gibson after which renowned cyberpunk author?
Isn't it William Gibson?
It is William Gibson.
Yeah.
Ding ding. He wrote Johnny Mnemonic, the book.
Yes, I have one of his other books.
Yeah, Neuromancer, I think, is like the famous
That's the book
one.
I own.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. See, look at that. 1 for 1. Awesome. Okay, question number 2. The hacker manifesto read by one of the agents was actually written by a real hacker. Do you know that person's name?
I know that I think his nickname is the Mentor, but I don't know his real name.
Lloyd Blankenship is the name that is
Okay.
listed, and the manifesto was originally published in Frack magazine in 1986.
Not familiar with that magazine. I'm too young, I think.
Never heard of it, but it points back to what we were talking about of sort of the authenticity and the intent that went into making this film. This wasn't like a cash grab attempt at like, oh, hackers and like computers are popular. We're just gonna like shoehorn this thing together and make sure that we have enough like people to sell it in place. This was a movie that took itself seriously, which it didn't have to at all. And it did its homework and it actually incorporates a lot of actual hacker history and culture and knowledge. And this is just a really good example of that.
It really is. I'm so impressed and really hope that the writer of this film has got some sort of accolade or at least messages from people saying you did a really good job with the culture that you were trying to portray here.
Yeah, Rafael Moreu didn't really do a ton. Like,
That's a bummer.
You step in and do The Rage with Carrie 2, and then worked on the Lone Gunman TV series, but that's kind of it.
Oh, bummer. He did a really good job.
Yeah, and Iain Softley, I think that's the correct pronunciation, went on to have like a pretty long career after this and even made a short film last year. So good to see that. But, you know, for someone that was making this kind of movie in 1994, it kind of like slow credits wise, but also went on to make K-Pax a few years after this, which a lot more popular
mainstream
sci-fi movie. So good to see the success there. And question number 3, there's a brief cameo as a bearded London hacker from which famous musician?
So the only reason I know this is because this is one of my all-time favorite bands.
Yeah.
And Sweet Dreams Are Made of This is actually my all-time favorite song ever.
Awesome.
And so that was a cameo by a member of the Eurythmics.
It was Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics.
Awesome. Yes. Oh, I'm so stoked that I did not completely bomb your trivia question. So I was very nervous.
Oh, you did great. Yeah, Eurythmics were like super big, like growing up in our household as well.
Yeah.
And then my youngest sister like really stayed with Annie as she got into like her solo career and stuff. But my mom had a shirt of Annie Lennox in like the Zorro mask from one of the album
Mm-hmm.
artwork, and she's like flexing as well, and it's like that image of her is like burned into my memory. I don't know if any of my sisters still have that shirt, but I gotta ask them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, you did great on the trivia.
Oh,
Nothing to
yes.
fear.
Phew. Thank you.
Yeah, but like there was some bonus trivia stuff. Like we talked about the cast and the crew going to hacker conventions. Johnny Lee Miller actually spent a lot of time on his own doing research for his character in that way. The virus design that the plague is using to embezzle funds
Mhm.
is called, well, I might get this wrong, but a salami slicing virus.
Similar to remember in Office Space?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Was like, this is the Office Space virus.
Exactly. And a worm is a technical term that is real in terms of viruses, and so like you said, they did use all of the right words in the right context, which was really impressive.
Yeah, because like it's so often the case that I think, in maybe less caring hands, or maybe if this was a big studio project that was just trying to like cash in on something quickly, then you're not going to have that same level of attention paid to those little details. So
Mhm.
it's really nice because it's like, I don't know a lot, but I felt like I knew enough at my age now where I could look at it and be like, "Oh, okay, like they're actually like using this in the right context," which is surprising. Like at 12 or 13 when this movie, I think I would have been 11. So like if I had watched this when I was 11, like none of that would have mattered. It would have been like they're clacking on the keyboards. I see a
Yeah.
screen. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It doesn't even matter to me. So to then see as an adult that they actually took the time and the care and the effort to do it the right way, it means a lot more to me now as an adult.
Absolutely, because there's nothing worse as an adult and as a professional to go to a movie and see your profession being completely fictionalized and, like in Grey's Anatomy with doctors, or as an electrician and you're watching a film and you're like, this is absolutely not how we do our job, or the technical terms are so out of whack that it's almost insulting to a point where you're like, you didn't talk to one electrician when you were writing this script.
Right? I know. Um, and that same virus design here was also the one that was, I think, used in Superman 3. So Richard Pryor is he's a computer hacker basically, and he's embezzling the same way that Fisher Stevens is here, just like trimming from transactions over and over. And look, Superman 3's got its issues for sure, but it also has one of my favorite Superman scenes in any movie, which is the drunk Superman. Where he gets like pissed in the bar and then he has to go fight Clark in the junkyard.
And the only reason I know anything about that movie, because I've never seen it,
Oh
is
wow.
because of Office Space when the guys go, "Yeah, it's like what they did in Superman 3."
Ah, yeah. That's awesome. And then like the last little tidbit of bonus trivia is that Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina got married shortly after this film, and then they stayed together for about 4 years after that. So nice to see that, hey, the chemistry that's on screen like was actually real, which I think is sort of like a lost art nowadays too, where I'll watch a movie and it's like a romance and someone will be like, they were so good together. And I'm like, really? I'm
Right.
like, I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm married and like I love my wife, but the way that these two interact is like they're cousins. So
Exactly.
it's a very fine line to walk, but I mean, like Angelina has like a very strong charisma, right? And
Mhm.
so when she's on screen, like they gave her kind of like very specific makeup choices in this movie as well, especially like with the eyeshadow. And I mean,
Yes.
she has like naturally like large lips, so it's like it's very pronounced. And so like when you see her on screen and she's like sort of got that like look in her face, you sort of know already like what she's communicating. But it makes sense that her and Johnny were able to strike up a romance after this film had ended, or probably while the film was being made, to be honest, and then
Mhm.
made it official after the film released.
That's interesting to think that she met 2 out of, I think, or 3 husbands on film sets.
Yeah, I mean, you're working very close
Oh,
together
yeah.
for very
Yeah.
odd hours for extended periods of time. I mean, it kind of seems like a natural fit, but obviously it has a lot of hurdles when you're in the industry for a long period of time. So I'm surprised maybe that it made 4 years, but I mean, I guess I don't know. Is that long for a Hollywood relationship? It seems like just
Yeah.
about par for the course.
Yeah, would say anything over about 2.5 years is long in Hollywood, but I think things are getting a little bit better. I will say I agree with you. Film sets are extremely intense, and it's very easy to be in this bubble and spark up a romance, and then you leave set and you're like, wow, we have absolutely nothing in common and nothing to talk about at all.
And convenience is a big motivator. But
Hmm.
speaking of romances, I did not expect at all for the plague to be knee deep in a romance with Lorraine Bracco's character. That one caught me off guard. I was like, okay, she's his boss. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, they're a little flirty and they're closer than I thought here. He's like smoking. I was like, are they in the same like apartment here? What's happening? And then pretty soon, like, they're in bed together. And I'm like, I did not see that coming.
Speaking of no romance and zero chemistry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that made sense for the movie itself because obviously they have to be together in order for them to be trying to steal from this company because they both need each other in order to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean they had no chemistry whatsoever in this film.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay, like, she's an attractive, powerful woman in this movie. Like, she's a high-ranking executive at this company where she's obviously giving him access to all these things he needs, but it's like he's still kind of like a dweeb, like even in their culture. It's like he's an outcast from the culture that he was in.
Mhm.
And then in the professional world, he's also kind of like an outsider. Like he rides his skateboard through the office while deriding people who are at their desks. So it's like that's the kind of guy he is. And I get that maybe she's greedy and she's ambitious maybe, but she never really strikes me as the same level of like evil that he is. I mean, like he's not like really evil, but like he seems to like want to do the bad thing where she's like seems like she's more of an enabler. So they were just a really odd fit.
He's certainly a bit of a Napoleon, and he's
Yeah.
very slimy. I mean, I don't know if you caught it, but while he's skateboarding away from the Gibson at one point in the film, he smacks this lady's ass who's just
Mm.
working at a desk. I was like, I didn't catch that when I was a kid. Oh my gosh. And he actually is completely okay with creating an ecological disaster where he's
Yeah.
flooding this oil out of these tankers, and that's something that really gives her pause when they're having that conversation on the escalators, and she's like, what are you doing? You're not actually going to release all this oil, right? And he's like, well, if I have to. Wow, your level of evil is way different than hers, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he is pretty smarmy and slimy and
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting too because I don't remember like when the first like big event where there was an oil leak in the ocean, but I remember it distinctly from the 90s, like in my childhood, that there was a big, I don't know if it was the Exxon Valdez one, but
Yeah,
there
that's the
was
one
like
I
a
remember
huge
too.
oil spill that was like all over the news and
Mhm.
the gigantic ecological disaster that came with it. To think that he would then flippantly sort of just, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to ruin several ecosystems and
Right.
throw millions and millions of dollars of oil into the ocean. Yeah, he's very dismissive of like how bad of an act that is. And I mean, I guess maybe it's just the skateboard and like the baseball bat to the radio and the sort of don't call me Eugene stuff that maybe waters down how evil he maybe really is. But credit to Fisher Stevens because he really plays this role pretty damn well.
He really does, yes, those aspects do infantize him a bit, that's true. but his words, you listen to him and you're like, wow, you are an evil son of a bitch, actually. You don't care about anyone. And maybe tonally that's a little off in this movie that overall has pretty low stakes. I mean, these people are in high school after all. And so maybe that's another critique that people can make about this movie. You know, going back to the whole point of this podcast, right? Bad movies, and the fact that it doesn't have the highest Metacritic or IMDb score. The things that he's talking about doing are so above and beyond what these kids are doing as hackers, which are arguing over a low budget TV station and what should be airing, which that first scene with Dade hacking and trying to put on a episode of The Outer Limits instead of this horribly racist late night show called America First. It's so fantastic and also really illustrates his morality quite nicely, which I agree with. But yeah, I mean, these kids are just messing around. And then all of a sudden, Fisher Stevens comes in and is like, I'm going to, as you said, destroy several ecosystems. And that's just so much higher level evil than what these kids are really equipped to deal with originally. But again, that creates some stakes for the movie, which is why it's so important that they win, right?
Yeah, and I like also that the design of the competition isn't like it's Dade and his love interest versus Plague. It's Dade and all of these people. Like a very inclusive, diverse bunch of people that are on the quote unquote like outcast side of things that are the hacker team taking on one guy who's very arrogant and, you know, thinks himself above sort of that station. So I love that aspect of it. And I also really just enjoy the sort of like cat and mouse nature of it because it's not a thriller that withholds information from you necessarily. It's not like, oh, there's a big twist coming. It's more just like strategically, like I would assume this probably as like a programmer, like you're a software engineer. So you're working on problems, right? Like point A to point B, how do you address a problem? And so they need to tackle this one particular problem. And so they outsource it. And there's a scene where they're like, oh, it's going to take you 10 minutes just to get into the system. Oh, well, if I help, we can do it in 9. Well, if I'm helping on this, we can do it in 7. If I help, we can do it in 5. So not only is it a great juxtaposition to this one super arrogant guy who thinks like he's the best, therefore he doesn't have to worry. He's got the best computer system. He's not in danger versus these kids who are like, hey, we need to be resourceful here and we like trust each other to help in this situation. I think it's a great pairing of sort of villainy and heroism on like a very like realistic grounded scale.
And I think that's really reminiscent of the 90s where there was that shift from Wall Street in the 80s, you know, greed is good, Gordon Gekko, or it's every man for himself. And there was that bit in the 90s where they were really disillusioned with everything. And the Hackers Manifesto actually says it in the movie where it says, we don't have a nationality or race. We are together. You are trying to separate us as a culture. And as hackers, we don't subscribe to any of that kind of BS. And of course the agent goes, oh, what a bunch of commies.
You're right. Yeah, and that's something that we still see today with a group like Anonymous, right? That are still sort of like adhering to that same ideology. And so again, it just points back to like this was a very authentic effort to bring this stuff to screen. And I really do appreciate that element of it. But you'd also mentioned the hacking of the TV station very early on. And so, number one, I was like, did he just hack a TV station so that he could like watch the show that he wanted to? Or was this an intentional decision because there's very much like an Alex Jones type of TV personality, whether it's like public access television or whatever they were on? Like he's saying some pretty outlandish racist stuff on the TV. So I'm like, okay, is this maybe a more informed decision on Dade's part to be like, I am making a decision to remove this particular guy from the air?
I think it could really go either way because that is some exposition that is telling us a lot about this guy's character and morality. You know, he's very protective of his mom. He's angry that he had to move, but he's actually a pretty good kid, right? He tries to do the right thing. He tries to protect his mother. He is very much, though he's counterculture, he's a very good guy. And I think that was really important, especially in the 90s, for this story to highlight that fact rather early on. But I do remember him turning on the TV when he's trying to hack the station. So I wonder if he just really wanted to watch an episode of Outer Limits.
Well, because it gets into this thing where it's the first time that he interacts with Angelina's character, and that I think she puts on a cartoon or something. And then we cut, and so it's like we don't really see them hacking, but we see the inside of the machine as these little hands are like fighting back and forth for this tape to play. And it's really like cute and strange, but I understand like it's either that or we show them like typing on a keyboard against each other, right? Like we can split screen it and they're both typing furiously, or we go inside the machine and we show you like what the efforts of their work are producing. And I think stylistically that's a good choice because there's only so much like typing on a keyboard that you can show before it's like, okay, we've burned our goodwill with the audience at that point, and we don't want to show them a movie where it's typing on a keyboard for 90 minutes. So to then like actualize what is happening as a result of them trying to hack one another, you do it in this very sort of like cute and playful way that actually I think really leads into the romance. Because having not seen this, I was like, my money is on Angelina being the other hacker. And so, of course, like it is, but I think it's set up to be that way, where that's why that moment is sort of that like tease where it's like this playful back and forth between them, where it's not this like really mean spirited thing.
Exactly.
This movie starts with Johnny when he's a kid, when he's still in his zero cool phase. And they bust into the house with like 40 cops, all guns drawn to arrest this little kid. And then they take him to trial. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking the list of offenses that he's done. I get it. He's a kid. He's not doing this like in any kind of mean spirited way. He's just good at what he does and maybe got a little carried away kind of thing. But the damage that he caused is certainly going to exceed the $45,000 like slap on the wrist that they gave him. But, I guess if his family is not of like, a lot of wealth, then that 45,000 is still going to be a lot. But it seems like that would have been a good place for them to sort of like recruit a guy like him to maybe work for the CIA or the NSA or the FBI or something. But instead, it's like, no, you're on house arrest. You're on computer arrest until you're 18. And then we get the moment where we see him with the birthday card. And it's like he's turned 18. The first thing he's doing is touching a computer.
And I think that is actually one of the biggest pieces of this movie being a bit dated from the 90s, because you're absolutely right. Nowadays, that kid would be immediately recruited by Google for like six figures a year, right? And he'd be getting a master's in computer science by the time he was 13, because yes, they set it up that Dade is ingenious, and I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, what he was doing at 11 was really impressive. And in the 90s, I was rewatching it this week, and in the 90s, all of the adults in control and in power had no idea about computers and didn't know their potential. So of course, what they're going to do is just basically ground the kid, right? Instead of harnessing his natural abilities.
It's like, it seems like we could put you to good use, but instead, like, no, you're on timeout until you're 18. But I mean, he had the computer ready to go, like at 18. It was just, okay, I can't touch it until the clock strikes midnight on my birthday kind of thing.
It's really became apparent to me as I watched this movie as I grew up that his mom was actually probably pretty cool about everything after a bit of time. And so I got the impression that his mother got him a computer probably around the time he was like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
And he was able to use it. He just couldn't hook it up to the internet because one of the things that she yells at him is, you hooked it up to the phone line, didn't you? And so she knew he had a computer. And I think he actually, I would assume he had it for quite some time. And, thinking about it as you grow up throughout the 90s, personal computers became very commonplace, right? And so the idea of them having a computer in their home and just allowing Dade to mess around with it is something I could assume happens actually in the storyline.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than I guess what my brain was allowing me to think on a first watch because his mom, like you said, he's a good kid for the most part. I mean, he did something that obviously cost a lot of money, but it wasn't this like act of malice. He cares about his mom a lot, and while he's upset about some things, like still at his core, good kid. So the mom is like, "Look, I know you're jonesing for a computer. We'll get you a computer and like you can mess around on it. Just don't hook it up to the phone line."
Yeah. Don't let anybody know that we have one kind of
Exactly, or
thing.
else you're gonna be in a lot more trouble than you were when you were 12 and did all
Mhm.
this. But it was really interesting to sort of see his, like, the perception of his identity unfold when he's Crash Override versus when they find out that he's Zero Cool. Because, like, they're witnessing him as one person doing all these things that they're impressed by, but they're actually more impressed by what he did as a kid, and it's like almost when he acknowledges that that also was him, they all flip out like way more than just like, "Hey, you're actually good at what you do, and I see you do it right in front of me," kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think it'd be like if you and I are on the podcast with someone who's just a guest and we're like, "Oh yeah, you're really in the movies." And he takes his mask off and it's actually Steven Spielberg and we're like, "Holy shit, it's Steven Spielberg."
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But so yeah, I was just like, it was nice that they sort of all were able to like give him his props at that point for doing the thing that he did when he was a kid and being so impressed by it. And that sort of like galvanized them all to really be like, oh my God, you're this kind of person that I idolized
Mhm.
this way. And so to be able to like be here and work with you is something that I really want to be invested in. And then that sort of like gets them all cowboyed up for the final showdown.
It's like being able to show everyone what you're capable of without having to tell them, and that's so much more impactful, right?
Yeah, because he wasn't like, I think it speaks to his character again, but he wasn't, braggadocious about it.
Mhm.
He wasn't like, "Oh, yeah, I was zero cool back in the day." He could have immediately, when he got back into hacking the first time, he could have just resumed being zero cool, right?
Right.
But he chose to have a new handle, to start from scratch, and to sort of like reinvent himself. And I think that just like speaks to his humility as a character, which is an important feature of a hero, I think, that maybe gets a little overlooked these days.
That's a really good point. He's certainly not a Tony Stark.
Right? And it was just like interesting in the MCU's curve too to see that like at the time that we were first introduced to Tony as this like brash, funny billionaire that had everything, it went from that to like, oh, now we're actually like sort of turning towards Captain America through the whole like middle of the story, and his sort of like Boy Scout nature kind of like represented what heroism was for a while too. And then it leads into like Civil War, and then obviously the end of if you're listening to this and you haven't seen all of the Marvel stuff, I don't want to spoil that for you. So we'll save that. But it is an interesting trajectory for that kind of character to end up here at the end, supported by all these other characters that really like looked up to him when he was a kid. And I appreciate the sort of soft touch that they went with there.
I really love the camaraderie in this movie as well. I know we've kind of cursory touched on it a couple times so far in our conversation, but him having all these friends who are so supportive and then each one of them getting in trouble with the cops because the cops are trying to track down who made this virus and each one of them risking themselves
Yep.
in order to help each other is such a wonderful thing to see and that whole montage when they get together to hack the Gibson is always one of my favorite parts of the film because they're all working together because they have these really loyal friendships that are so supportive and it's certainly something you always want to have in your friends as well.
Yeah, and like we had talked about, just sort of like the group being like diverse, inclusive. Like there's women, there's the two Razor and Blade, the two Asian hackers that work for them.
The
Uh,
Wayne's World of the movie.
yeah, prominently featured like black character in one of the supporting roles too in the '90s. So like really a interesting snapshot of characters, but also it's like none of them ever really have any kind of animosity towards each other. Like the most we get is sort of the competitive rivalry
Mhm.
between Angelina and Johnny Lee Miller. And that's really like that's how they're flirting. Like that's their love language because they're hackers is that they have to like hack each other in order to really like express their interest in one another. But at the end of the day, like they're also teenagers, you know. So they're still going through a lot of like changes as well. So maybe they haven't quite found out how to like articulate things using words yet in their life. But to see that basically, like, yeah, there's no animosity. There's not that Judas character in the group that is like, oh, I'm jealous of his success, or I'm jealous that he's now getting the attention from the girl that I wanted. So now I'm going to submarine everything and I'm going to sell everybody out. So
Right.
I really like that because even the youngest character is like, no, they get behind him at the end. They're the ones who are like, oh, we've all been busted out. All of the better hackers are out at that point, and he's the one that's closest. And what do? They all rally around behind him, trying to get him to the finish line. And that's really sweet to see. And I liked it a lot.
And it's certainly something that we don't see as often in movies as people like us would like to, who really do like, as you said, either camaraderie or those happy endings, right? The
Hmm.
healthy relationships that we're
Right.
talking about.
Supportive relationships, like friendships where you actually like look out for one another and celebrate the wins of your friends kind of thing. Yeah, it was just really great to see. And I think it's actually probably the most endearing thing in the film that gives it staying power. Because if it doesn't have that and you don't really care for the ensemble of characters that you're watching, it doesn't it doesn't translate in the same way. It's like sure you get the story of like good hacker, bad hacker kind of thing, but it throws out that entire sort of like subtext that they're working on about the manifesto and the reason that the agent said that they're commies because they're talking about sort of like equality for people, and that's an important thing to put forward, and it was pretty prescient in the 90s, and that's kind of why I looked at that the Alex Jones character. It's like so this is maybe like 25 years 20 years before Alex Jones really took off as like this brash personality, but we see a lot of personalities like that in media and on television now. So to see that the writer and filmmaker had the foresight to be like, yeah, this is sort of the anti thing that we're building our movie towards. Like our characters are the opposite of that guy and they don't like that guy.
And I think that worked for a couple of reasons. As you said, not only the script, but just the sheer talent of every supporting actor in this
Yes.
movie. You talked about him a little bit, like Lawrence Mason. He did a great job in The Crow in the late '90s, being a bad guy.
Yeah.
Renoli Santiago, loved him in Con Air when he's the very
Oh
effeminate
yeah.
prisoner, right? And then, of course, the legendary Matthew Lillard, who made that character his own. I mean, being serial killer, but spelled like
Yeah.
Cereal, because he just is always eating, right? And Matthew Lillard makes every single movie he's in better. I adore that man. He's such a fun character actor and he's so great in everything he does. Of course, Scream came out, I think, like a year late after
Yeah.
Hackers. But he every single character is flushed out in this movie and really a whole person, and I think it's the actors that made them that way, and so each one is someone you can cheer for, and I think that's one of the reasons, as you said, is really a highlight of this film.
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of have like a soft spot for ensembles because I like team sports. I play team
Mhm.
sports. I like cooperative games as well, where it's like, look, I enjoy my solo gaming adventure and sort of like my isolated introvert time as well. But the thing that I like about team sports is that like everybody has a strength and a weakness. And the goal is to all work together to like make the best possible outcome for everybody. And so to see that represented here in a very sort of like sports team like way, like almost like a Mighty Ducks, where it's all like the outcasts and they're sort of the underdogs. And then when they figure out their strengths and weaknesses and they can play into each other's strengths and weaknesses and help one another, they're able to overcome. But I'd heard you also mention the Five Nights at Freddy's on your recent episode that I was listening to, and Matthew Lillard was in that, right?
He is. I actually didn't see that film. My
Okay.
co-host John, who loves horror movies,
Did not
watched
like
it.
that.
He did not like it, though I've heard great things about it, so I might have to give it a shot just to be a bit of a tiebreaker there.
Yeah, I don't know how much Matthew Lillard's in it, but I know that he is in it, and I was happy to like see him in it because it's like I haven't seen him like as a mature actor really, and I mean that's my fault, not his. I saw him in the 90s where he was doing these kind of characters where he was the sort of quirky, younger, very, very energetic guy. But I never really
Right.
got to the opportunity to like see him mature as an actor beyond those kind of roles. So I'm interested to see him take on something now that he's probably in his what, late 40s maybe? Or
I would think so, yeah, he's a little bit older than us, so I would say late 40s.
all right, well, we'll have to make a pact and watch some newer Matthew Lillard movie, and then we can talk about that at a future time. But maybe we don't make it Five Nights at Freddy's.
Sounds like a plan. And, talking about team sports, it's kind of perfect because several of these characters in this movie wore goalie jerseys
Mm.
from soccer. And that was a very deliberate fashion choice by several of them. Nikon's wearing one when he's DJing at the party and stuff. I'm like, where did the soccer gear come from?
Right, because they filmed some of this in London, is that right? Or somewhere in the UK?
I'm not sure. I know some of it was actually shot in New York, which is always fun when, again, going back to the 90s with the practicality that we talked about and that being so much more genuine, I think. And so actually filming in New York, when they're on the streets of New York rollerblading down is such a great scene. And I think they filmed at a New York high school, but some of it could have absolutely been in the UK. I just haven't done the research.
Yeah, they filmed at like a magnet high school that actually like focused on computer science and,
Oh, okay.
STEM stuff actually,
Nice.
which is kind of like, a little bit foreign, but they filmed at Pinewood Studios in England a little
Classic.
bit,
Okay.
and that scene in like the club, I forgot the name of the club, but there's like that sunken pool, and they turned it into the arcade and everything. But from what I read, they said that that was like a historically protected landmark, so they had to be very careful about getting everything in and out there. But that would maybe explain like why they made the choice to like incorporate the goalie jerseys because it's like, soccer is obviously huge everywhere but the United States.
Right.
And so to be like very ingrained, they film in England, let's see, London, Buckinghamshire. So they spent a pretty good amount of, I don't know how much time, but there are a lot of UK locations listed. So it's kind of an interesting little detail with the goalie jersey there.
Yeah, that makes sense that it would be a tie-in, but that is some pretty classic places to film. I mean, Pinewood Studios has a really big history when it comes to movies.
Yes, it does. So you're in some rarefied air though. Like you maybe wouldn't expect that from this movie,
No, not
but
at all. I
yeah.
mean, the place where they filmed, like, what was it? Aliens, The Abyss,
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
of Indiana Jones, I think, was filmed there too. Like, there's some pretty major players that came out of Pinewood Studios.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like certain concert venues where like the energy of the venue brings like a different level of like performance out of the artist. And there's like some of those iconic venues in the world where like when you play there, it's just like a different show. And I think that speaks to like the energy of the room and the building and the history of it and stuff like that. So I think, when you know that you're sort of like walking on hollowed ground, like
Hmm.
going to Pinewood Studios and like we're making this like movie that you wouldn't expect us to be making and filming here to do it there. I think, maybe imbued the whole project with a little bit extra energy because this movie is not short on energy at all.
No, and for a movie about people sitting in front of computers, that's
Right.
quite impressive. And yeah, I agree. Like it's like saying the Hollywood Bowl, the Forum, House of Blues, right? All of those locations down in Southern California are so iconic and have such a rich history that you want to bring your A game, right?
Exactly. So I think maybe a little bit of that happened, but just a little bit of speculation there.
No, I
Um,
like it.
so right now we're gonna get to the point in the show where I ask you if there's anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't actually get to cover yet. Because I know I I oscillate between being like a copious notes taker and a non-note taker, and they're very different experiences sometimes. But for something that I'm seeing for the first time and I didn't think I was going to have time to like revisit for the sake of notes, I made sure to take notes, and I'm sure you did too.
Absolutely. I actually took more notes than I usually do for my podcast because we don't spoil things. We don't spoil any of the movies that we talk about on my podcast. So you get to a point where you're like, well, I can't talk about this part. And so instead, it was very freeing on to be a guest on your show because I could talk about the whole movie. And so, yes, I did take a lot of notes, and there are just so many little aspects of this movie that not only, as you said, are great attention to detail, but also really have informed us and influenced things later on. And so one of the pieces of when they dive into this file that is the crucial piece of this whole entire story, there's this the parts that actually only few pieces of visual effects that are in this movie, and all of those sequences and equations are floating around in front of their faces, and it totally reminded me in The Hangover with Zach Galifianakis and that classic
Yeah.
gif that we have now, and it's like, oh, that's where that came from. But yeah, I mean, there's so many pieces of this movie that I love. I'm certainly could talk about it for much longer, but I'm just so glad to hear that you enjoyed it as a first time watch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I enjoyed it too because, it'd be a really weird position for me to be like, "Oh, I didn't like this movie." But what I found out is that basically every time it's been a movie that I've seen for the first time, I'm like, "Yeah, I liked it." And I'm really glad that I got to talk to somebody who loves it so much because like listening to somebody else like share their love for it really helps inform like some of maybe the hazy areas that I didn't like latch onto right away in this movie, like the fact that you have an experience in computer programming and this helped maybe inform your decision to take that route as a career is a really like interesting nuanced piece of this story that connects the film to you in a very particular way. And in talking to some of the people in the film club recently, we were just talking about this sort of notion that people are like afraid to say that they love something because it makes them vulnerable, because
Mhm.
when you say that you love something, it means that like the movie is connecting to something in you, and if you express your love for it, you have to express the part of you that like you're maybe a little bit scared to share. So the knee jerk reaction, at least with I see with social media, is a lot. It's easier to be negative. So I'm really glad that you were able to make some time, come on this show, and share your unabashed love for this film.
Oh, I certainly love tons of movies that are quote unquote bad. I have
Me too.
lots of guilty pleasures, and as we talked about before I came on the show, what movies I could pick, and just sending you the proposed list of movies that was only 5 movies long. It took me a while just to edit it down to 5, let alone us picking the one we did, and so I'm always happy to discuss films that are not liked by the general audience. And as I always say, film is so subjective that it's always every film is going to be somebody's favorite, no matter what film it is. This is certainly one of my nostalgic movies that I like to go back to every couple years that just remind me of growing up and the path that I took, and how movies influenced it, particularly this one. And so happy to talk about it on the show with you.
Awesome. Well, now, unfortunately, is the part of the show where we go to Critics Corner
Oh
and we hear the
no.
horrible, mean thing that critics had to say. But, pretty often we see that critics either were having a bad day or maybe they just were not in the wheelhouse for the audience for this film. But we've got a total Metascore of 46, but there are some solid scores on the board, and we'll save those for the end because we always start at the bottom and work our way to the top so that we end with the most positive.
Right.
And we start at the bottom with a 30 out of 100 on this scale from the Los Angeles Times. There's no author attributed here because they don't want to attach themselves to
Coward.
this. Exactly. Okay, so the LA Times pull quote says, "All the sound and fury in the world can't disguise the fact that yowling music, typing montages, and computer animation do not a gripping finale make. This movie megabytes."
Okay, boomer.
right?
As soon as they start complaining about the music, I'm like, dude, you sound so old.
Well, it's also this like trend of things that I've seen in doing the critic reads is that there's a lot of critics who love to sort of make puns based on the style of movie that it is. So it's like, oh, I hate this movie, but I'm going to write my review in the style of this movie just to be like extra snarky. And it's like, that's not the win that you think it is. Like the music, first of all, is solid. It's maybe like there's like some weird changes where it's like, it almost sounds like Seal or something is in there, and then it like changes to like a different style of music. But the overall like music throughout the whole movie is pretty good. And typing montages, like I said, they did a pretty nice job of disguising those typing montages in the scene that we're talking about with the little robots like fighting each other trying to grab the tape. Like obviously they're hackers. There's gonna be some typing on keyboards because that's what they're doing. But for a movie that is about typing on keyboards, they did a pretty damn good job of being as delicate as they could while also sort of giving us something visually to stimulate us while the keyboard typing is actually happening.
Exactly.
And I feel like the finale is actually pretty solid. I mean, the visual presentation of it, at least, like with them in the big room and the Gibson as this like giant overbearing computer, and they're all working from like Grand Central Station phone terminals kind of thing. Like it's a nice juxtaposition of those two ideas where it's like you have all the resources on one side, money, size, scope, like actual computing power, and then you just have like ingenuity, hard work, and like actual intention and care on the other side. And that's, it's sort of like a microcosm of Hollywood a little bit in that way. And that like this is sort of like an indie spirit film versus like this big Hollywood blockbuster esque type structure.
That's a really good analogy. And if you think about it, when you're in pre production and you're sitting down and reading the script, you have literally nothing to go on when it comes to trying to think of visualizations for a good chunk of this film. This is the 90s. Most of these people have only worked on computers for a very short amount of time, let alone not having much of the internet or any sort of visualizations on computer screens in general. I mean, a lot of computer screens in the early 90s were still two colors, like black and green, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
all of these people had to be super creative coming up with filling in these scenes when, yeah, these kids are just typing. How are we going to make that entertaining? And I think they were super successful at it.
I think so too. Like especially given what you just said, like the framework for what a computer sort of like interaction would look like just doesn't quite exist yet, especially for the general public. And I'm thinking of a movie like Lawnmower Man and how much that movie is derided, but that movie is hated on a lot too because of its like presentation of like that visual space, because we don't really know at that point. Like video games are just like leaving sort of like the 2D environment at that point in history as well. So to be creative, to have foresight, and to want to make something that is visually appealing, even given the restrictions that you're working with, I think says a lot more about the filmmakers than it does about this persnickety nameless critic.
That's why they kept anonymous.
Okay, we've got, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 50s on the board. So I'll let you pick two of them. And we've got the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Washington Post, the Austin Chronicle, Real Views, and the New York Times.
Let's go with New York Times and one of the San Francisco papers.
Okay, we'll go to the New York Times first. This is
Because
Janet Maslin.
Nice. I picked those because New York is where it is based on. The story, at least, is located in New York, and I'm actually originally from the Bay Area, so I had to pick one of those.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Janet Maslin from the New York Times, give it a 50. She says a lot of attention has gone into the film's video games, computer imagery, and costumes, to the point where simply watching these artifacts is half the fun. But eventually, Hackers turns tedious, perhaps not realizing that an audience can get tired of the same old equations floating in cyberspace. So, okay, that's a nicer presentation than we got. but she gives credit where credit is due to the way that the games look, the way that the imagery and the costumes are, and she acknowledges that that is part of the fun. And fun is a word I don't hear thrown around very often by critics at this portion of the show. So I'll give her credit for that. I wouldn't say it's tedious, but for someone who is not super familiar with computers and maybe doesn't really have the context or the ability to deep dive the movie and do the research the way that like we do for a podcast like this where we're talking about it for a couple hours, maybe not having the context of, oh, all of this stuff is very authentic in the hacker space doesn't allow you to sort of appreciate that, and maybe that's why it becomes tedious.
I totally understand where she's coming from, and I agree with you. And I think an analogy could be if you and I sat down and watched a movie about cricket. It would become, I mean, granted, I don't know if you're a huge cricket fan secretly, and so excuse me if I'm off base here, but it would be a movie that would become quite tedious for the both of us because it's about something that A, we really aren't caring about that much, but more importantly, B, that we don't really know anything about. And so, coming from there, I think that she has a fair standpoint and critique of the movie because it seems like it's just something she's not really into, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, and I mean, still 5 out of 10 is, at least that's like perfect middle ground. So it's like, hey, I
Yeah.
acknowledge there was things that I liked. Here's the things I didn't like, and I'm just gonna call it a wash kind of situation versus someone who wants to like, take a dump on it for the intention of taking a
Right.
dump on it. Like we read from the LA Times and like the Washington Post one that I'm not gonna read, but is also mean. We'll go to let's let's say the San Francisco Chronicle because that has an author's name attached to it, and I believe accountability is a good thing.
Agreed.
So Peter Stack from the San Francisco Chronicle gave it a 50 as well. Says, "Want a believable plot or acting? Forget it. But if you just want knockout images, unabashed eye candy, and a riveting look at a complex world that seems both real and fake at the same time, Hackers is one of the most intriguing movies of the year." So that's like, I feel like that's way more positive, other than the leading insult, than the other 50 on the board that we've read.
Agreed. And I am happy that I was just now reminded of these are all timely critiques, right? I mean, these are all
Yeah, for the most part.
written up from the 90s when this movie came out. So it totally makes sense. But yeah, I'm always happy to hear negative reviews, either way, negative or positive. Just back it up a little bit, right? Like, don't be overtly negative like the anonymous guy that you just read. If you give me some substance and some evidence as to why you think it's not a good movie, I'm going to listen to you and respect your opinion. And yeah, those last couple you read, I think are totally reasonable, and I could see where they're coming from. I disagree, but that's okay.
Yeah, and it's like a friend of mine who they also have a podcast, and they had posted like a prompt about sort of like the need for criticism because it's like good to be critical, and I'm like, it is, but I think you're conflating criticism with automatically being negative. I was like, if you look at it that way, then like really, like what are you doing? Like there is a thing called constructive criticism. I don't think criticism has to be inherently negative, and like thoughtful, well actualized criticism actually like is useful. But like if you're being negative for the sake of being negative, thinking that that's the only way to look at it, like I think that just it's not a great place to start from because like where do you have to go from there?
And it doesn't sound very fun at all. And so and that actually is how I approach going into movie theaters as well. Is I always adjust my expectations based on what I'm walking in to watch instead of this completely m- just in inconsistent view, or actually too consistent view of I'm going to walk in and critique it based on whether or not I think it's an Oscar winner, right? Like how
Yeah.
boring must that be? Whereas I'll walk into a movie and like Wonka, like you said, you went to a couple weeks ago, you walked into it expecting to have a little bit of fun. I bet you assumed that there would be some whimsy to it. And because you had reasonable expectations, you probably had a really good time, right? I'm not going to go into a Fast and Furious movie assuming that there's going to be great acting and a completely believable storyline with realistic action sequences. No, I'm going to walk in being like, this is a total popcorn movie. I'm going to have a good time and think about having like a cheeseburger and Corona after this movie.
That
And
sounds
that's
like
how
a
I
good
enjoy it.
Okay, well, at least we get to close it out with some good reviews. There's some high scores on the board here. We've got a 70 coming up next, and that's from the Chicago Reader. That's Jonathan Rosenbaum. It says, without being any sort of miracle, this is an engaging and lively exploitation fantasy thriller about computer hackers, anarchistic in spirit, that succeeds at just about everything the net, which I mentioned, failed to, especially in representing computer operations with some visual flair. So yeah, this is someone who was able to contextualize what this movie is at the time it came out, give a comparison to another movie that existed at the same time that was sort of exploitative of like cyberspace in a different way, and actually recognize like what this movie does well. So there you go, Jonathan. That's how you do it.
I think that's actually a perfect review of this movie. I would change the score slightly. I would give this movie around an 85. I think it's a
Okay.
solid B+ movie. It's a lot of fun. Maybe even A- if they remove the random dream sequences, as you mentioned. But yeah, I think that's a solid review. He just is missing the costume element of it.
Yeah, well, we got one more crack at it, and
Okay.
that's 75 on the board, Chicago Sun-Times, and that means it's Roger Ebert himself.
Yes.
Highest score on the board. I always love seeing that because, like, Raj has like sometimes very weird taste where he really just is against a couple of particular styles of movies. But every time I see him like near the top, I'm like, oh, thank God. I was like, everybody else hates it, but if Ebert likes it, then like that should matter more. But yeah, good old Raj says Jolie, the daughter of John Voight and Miller, a British newcomer, bring a particular quality to their performance that is convincing and engaging. So he doesn't really go into depth about it, but he's like, look, the leads are good. I like that about it. And he gave it a 75. That's 3 out of 4 stars on Ebert's scale, which would indicate that he likes more than just the acting, but still pretty impressive to see that a 3 out of 4 for him for this movie is not what I would have expected if I had to guess.
He was the one I always agreed with, at least more often than Siskel. Siskel was way too critical for me. And Ebert, I was like, wow, we really have the same taste in movies. And then I agree. There'd be these random reviews that he'd throw out where I'm like, wow, that is the exact opposite of the way I feel about this movie. And it would just be these weird one-off instances, right? But consistently, I thought he was a really good guy. And or at least I agreed with his taste, I should say, most consistently. And yeah, I agree. I mean, Johnny Lee Miller was a newcomer at the time. He of course starred in Train Spotting, which is one of my co-stars' all-time favorite movies. I met him actually when I was working in LA and randomly at the Burbank airport. And I talked to him for a couple minutes. He was a super nice guy. He was doing Eli Stone at the time, and because we talked about where he was coming from, he's like, "Oh, I was just doing press for the new season Eli Stone," and I mentioned that how much I loved Hackers, and that's how I was introduced to him, and just really thanked him for that movie. And he was just really patient and really nice about the whole thing, and so it's nice to hear that other people like of all people, Ebert, who's a legend, would say that he appreciated his acting ability in this movie. It just makes me so happy.
That's a fantastic story. Now, every time I go to the Burbank airport, I'm going to be looking out for Johnny Lee Miller, being like, oh, you know what? I've seen Hackers now, too.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Well, I'm glad that we got to close it out with Raj and that he liked it, because that's always a nice counterpoint to when I see the score is listed so low. But the vast majority of the scores that were there were they were all mostly 50s. So it's right in like the middle of the pack where it's like coin toss between whether you're going to like it or not. And ultimately I could see that 6.2 score on IMDb is pretty solid user score. For me, like the bar of like where I think I'm probably not going to watch that movie is way lower than a 6. So, and I think if I like honestly grade on a curve, cause I think the highest IMDb rated movie is like a 9 something, like 9.1 or something. So if 9 is really like the closest to the high, then the 6 is actually a much better 6 than a 6 out of 10. The 6 out of 9 is a lot
True.
better. So yeah, if you grade on a curve, I think this is actually a pretty well liked movie by the people that like it. And it's got 74,000 reviews too. So it's not on the smallest end, not on the highest end either, but enough in the bank to make that 6.2 respectable.
Nice. I'm so glad to hear that. And, also to remember that so many of those critiques were from the 90s. Think about this
Yeah.
movie being released these days. They wouldn't even consider it counterculture anymore.
No, not at all. These would all be like, very popular because they'd be like Twitch streamers.
Exactly.
Now that we've covered all our bases, hit all the tent poles that keep this show afloat, I want to give you a chance to tell my audience about your show because you've got a podcast and I was listening to it yesterday and today a little bit. I was listening to your Alien Invasion episode and you were talking about Men in Black and not it's not 8 millimeter, Super 8. I was like,
Mhm.
no, you did not pick 8 millimeter.
No, no. Very different film.
Yeah, so you're talking about a couple of different Alien Invasion movies, but at the beginning of your show, you're talking about what you had seen recently. And you had mentioned They Cloned Tyrone. And that is one of my favorite movies from 2023. Even the song that closes out the movie is titled Shiesty, which is part of my user handle basically everywhere.
Mhm.
It's spelled correctly, which a lot of new people spell it with the I before the E, which is not correct. And so I was like, was this movie like made for me? Because like the music choice at the end, like you said, Jamie Foxx is unbelievable in this movie. And of all the actors in supporting roles this year, I feel that just didn't get any shine for their performance. I think he would probably be at the top of that because he's just so charismatic in that movie. And you mentioned it too, like his line delivery and the actual dialogue that he's reading is absolutely wild. So I'm so glad that you got a chance to see it and enjoyed it.
I absolutely did. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. And I would have loved to see, I agree with you. I would have loved to see Jamie Foxx get some of the like lesser for lack of a better term, smaller awards
Yeah.
than the Oscar. Like he was never going to be nominated for an Oscar because A, that movie is not Academy friendly in any
Nope.
way, shape, or form. But also B, there wasn't Netflix would not have ever tried to market that movie to the Oscars, but a Golden Globe Award or like a Critics' Choice Award or one of those smaller, even SAG, somebody recognizing his acting chops in that movie and just his performance being so memorable and so fun. And God, I love that man. He's so talented and multifaceted. And I liked him even better than the main John Boyega just
Yeah.
because he was so charismatic and stole every single scene he was in. And yes, I absolutely love that film. I'm so glad when you mentioned to me earlier, you're like, "Oh, I do want to talk about something about your show." I was like, "Uh-oh." So the fact that it's positive makes me so happy. And yes, I'm always stoked to hear somebody else watching that movie, but also B enjoying it because it's a unsung movie of 2023 that more people need to watch.
Yeah, kind of just like released like sort of in the doldrums. It was like maybe right before summer or like late spring or something like that. And then it didn't really get a push for theaters. And like, the star power in that movie is big enough where I thought that people would pay attention. But as many things, with Netflix, as we talked about, it's like its availability is almost a curse. Like the fact that I know that it's there, I can just go to my library and press play, like, and it'll be there kind of thing is a discouraging incentive or it's a disincentive for people maybe because for me, I was like, "Oh, it's Jamie Foxx, it's John Boyega, like, this seems like a weird, interesting sci-fi story for me, so I'm definitely gonna check it out," but I could see why people maybe didn't rush to see it.
Well, and Netflix makes such interesting choices when it comes to highlighting specific films,
Yeah.
right? We heard about Maestro for months, and that
Yeah.
is a Netflix produced movie, just like They Cloned Tyrone. And it just seems like the prioritization is all up to Netflix, and that's going to influence whether or not people even know about these films being released on the platform.
Yeah, that's a good point because like if they want to manipulate their numbers of like, oh, this is the most
But
popular thing on
yeah.
Netflix, it's ranked number one.
I
Well,
never trust those
right?
lists
Well,
ever.
because if you sign into Netflix the weekend that like their brand new movie comes out and it's like the backdrop for Netflix when you sign in, then it's like, oh, here's the new thing that they're doing. But like if that goes away very quickly and they don't push that, then I can see that it just sort of like falls into the pile of all the other things that like you need to watch on Netflix. And we're all cursed by extensively long watch lists at this point, I'm sure. I joke, I was like, my watch list has like kids and grandkids at this point.
It does. I'm right there with you.
All right, but let's not get too sidetracked. You do have a show, and that's
Oh,
where
that's
I
right.
was
Yes.
going with this.
Yes, I do have a show. So myself, as well as my good friend John, we both spent a lot of years in the film industry, about 25 years collectively, and we now each pick a movie every week to recommend without spoiling them. And our show is called Movies You Missed. It's available on all podcast platforms. And we're nearing show or episode 100. So we've got things we think dialed in a good way, and like to uh, recommend movies that either flew under the radar or have a lot of rewatchability value, and really pride ourselves on not spoiling anything so people can be introduced to new movies. So that's Movies You Missed.
Awesome. And since I was listening to the Alien Invasion one, like, is there a way that you decide on like what the topic of the show is going to be? Because I think I was leaving off, and the next episode coming up was about to be Disney movies.
Yes, we try to make our choices where they're similar enough where there's some sort of theme. So it seems like not as so much as a double feature, but just that the topics are similar enough where it seems like there's some consistency in the episode with both of our films. And it really comes down to which one of us has picked a movie first. And so we have this spreadsheet that we go off of, and each of us fill it in. And then we play a kind of a match game and be like, oh, well, he picked Men in Black because it's one of his favorite movies. And so for me, I came in and was like, oh, well, what would be a really good companion movie to that? Something that's about aliens, something that's lighter fare, something that a film that is, maybe more family friendly. Oh, I've got it, Super 8. And so that's usually the thought process behind the films. And so the episode that came out yesterday is actually Ben Stiller comedies. And so that's how we paired those, and it's Tropic Thunder and Dodgeball, which are still both hilarious.
Yeah, that's a nice 1-2 punch right there. You're gonna have a good time watching those for the show.
We definitely laughed a lot in that episode, that's for sure.
That's awesome. But I mean, that's also like a really good unintentional segue that I didn't plan into sort of the final thing of the show. Like, I used to ask, like, oh, what would you sort of like, what would be a good companion film or a good jumping off point? But I've sort of framed it as like, what's a good gateway drug for people that you want to get to watch Hackers? Or if you like Hackers, what's another movie that's like in that realm that you would recommend to pair with this one?
I mean, the nice thing is I think you already did my job for me because you talked about The Matrix, which I think is a perfect companion piece or introductory piece to Hackers. Anyone who's seen The Matrix and like the technology aspect of it, you can definitely watch Hackers. And, we talked about Johnny Mnemonic, which is great. And I'd certainly love to come back and discuss that movie if you want me to. That would be a lot of fun with the two of us, I think.
I wrote it down, so it's going to happen.
Oh, man. Okay, good. And any other I'm trying to think of newer movies that are good comparisons, and it's tough because we talked about Red Dawn, but that's more of an '80s movie, and so just those ensemble casts or groups of people who are fighting against corporate greed, and anybody who likes technology, I think would enjoy watching this film.
Yeah, the other one that I would say popped to mind is the Ryan Phillippe one, Antitrust. From
Wasn't Harrison Ford in that film?
I don't remember. He might
It's
be.
not a good movie though.
No.
That wouldn't even make it on this show.
And Swordfish was the other one that I brought up
Thank
earlier.
you.
Which,
Yes.
I mean, you get John
Yeah.
Travolta and Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry. Like, even if you fall, you're gonna fall upwards with something like
Right.
that. So.
That movie is so ridiculous.
It is.
But it is a bad movie we love. That's true.
All right. Well, Thank you so very much for coming on the show and for just laughing and having a good time and talking about a movie that you really genuinely love and sharing that love, not just with me, but with the people of the audience that are going to listen to this show and hopefully anybody that listens to it and then wants to take a chance on Hackers.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. I was incredibly not only flattered but honored to be on your show and discuss movies, and absolutely would welcome any opportunity in the future to come back and do some more of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I may have to reach out to you to put me in touch with John so we can talk about Monkey Bone.
Oh, that is already in the works. Don't you worry. I've already talked to John about it and told him that he has found a friend with someone who also enjoys Monkey Bone, because that is one of the few movies on our show that one of us hated that the other one picked. And it happened really early on in our podcast. It was like episode 7. And I did not enjoy that movie at all, but he loves it. And so he's always on the lookout for someone who likes it as well. And so, yes, he is already given a heads up that he needs to come on and talk about Monkey Bone with you.
Awesome. John, if you're listening to this, me and you, it's the two of us. We're the two fans of Monkey Bone that exist. But for people that are only starting to like learn about Brendan Fraser now that he's had his like later career resurgence, this is a really good time capsule movie for like what Brendan Fraser was doing in the 90s, and it was bonkers. So I'm so looking forward to that. V, thank you so much for coming on. Have a good night.
My pleasure, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks again to V for coming on the show. I'm really glad that we finally got to sit down and work on something together, and I look forward to doing so again in the future. And if you liked what you heard, you can check out V's show. That's Movies You Missed. And of course, I'm going to put the links up for that in the show notes as well. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode. I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts, and I appreciate you spending your time with us. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you do, please consider leaving a rating and telling a friend about it. And the new support page is live at ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/badmovieswelove. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have a bad movie you love, and or maybe would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact me now at badmovieswelove@theshice.com or badmovieswelove on Twitter and Instagram, and that's love with an LUV. And as always, take care, be well, stay safe, and have fun however you get your movies.